my taxes have actually increased not 18%, but 58%. 58% on my home. So think about what that does to your payment every month.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, Wednesday, January 29th, we're going to get into Arlington County property tax assessments, the Tysons casino bill, and some return to office mandates that are causing quite a stir, not only across the nation, but I got to think that we're at the epicenter, of the RTO mandates. Like, you can get upset about return to office if you're in like San Francisco or LA, but we're in Arlington. So I guess we're not in the epicenter. Like, if we were, recording this from Capitol Hill or Chinatown or Georgetown, then we would really be in the epicenter. But, let's be honest, many people choose to live in Arlington because of the federal government. But
absolutely.
First, Shawn, let's start with the residential property tax assessment. Now, you called me yesterday, and I got to imagine you called me as soon as you opened up the mail, as soon as you ripped open your brand new, sparkling Arlington County tax assessment.
I did.
The article from ARL Now, and as homeowners across the county are finding out, is that residential property values up 3.7% as the county announces. Shawn, walk me through what's gone through your head in the past week or so since you've been hit with this news, dare I say.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big one. And I think there's a lot of people in Arlington that are pulling their hair out and like, what? You're tax assessing my property at what value? And what the actual bill says on it, it says we are tax assessing you on the actual market value of your home. All right. And so never in Arlington, when I have looked at properties, very few times has the actual sales value of the home been what the tax value was. It was always, the tax value was always slightly lower. For some it'd be $50,000, some $100,000, some, bigger houses could be a couple $100,000 difference in what your tax assessed value is compared to what your actual market value is, because these things change all the time. And I was always under the assumption, and every jurisdiction is different. Okay. So Alexandria City is going to be different from Arlington on how they assess and how their tax assessed values are taken. And so, I used to live in Old Town, and I always thought, man, there's no way I could even get what they're tax assessing me on my old property in Old Town. And so they were actually high. Arlington County now just increased all of our tax assessed values, not all of them, but the majority, 80% of home values in homeowners in Arlington are going to see a pretty good jump in their tax assessed value. And overall, I think it was a jump of 3.7% in the actual values for Arlington County. So if you're opening your tax bill, you're going to be like, wow. One thing is like, the funny thing is a lot of people are going to like, oh, wow, look at my property value. Look how expensive my house is. Look at what my house is worth. This is great news. And then they're like, oh, wait, but Arlington County is taxing us on the actual value of that property. And now our tax bill just went up X percent. And I think there's going to be a lot of mad people. I think that Arlington County real estate section is getting a lot of calls right now, because when I looked at mine, I was like, wow, I don't know that I could get this for my property. I don't know that I can get what you're tax assessing me on. I don't know that. Even if I did and was able to get that value, I would have to put at least $50,000 to $60,000 into my property to get it to that property value, I would think. I really believe that Arlington went a little bit above and beyond on some of these, on mine. And I just want to know what the deal is, right? I mean, I understand that budgets change, and we're seeing some trying times when interest rates go up and commercial values are going down, and our residential property values have gone up. But what happens is their income or their tax revenue from commercial properties has gone down because there's vacancy rates. The property values have gone down because of those, so they're assessing them lower. But then what they're doing is they got to make up some money somewhere, so they're going to increase their residential property tax notes. And that's really where they're gaining a lot of this revenue from. And my thought is like, let's be responsible, right? Like, let's just be responsible and not spend so much. Let's find out where we can pull back. And I know that they said they'd done this, but if we would actually go to that budget and look at what they're spending on and ask the people, do you feel comfortable spending this much money on this, A, B, C, and D? There should be a survey when you're paying your taxes. What would you want your taxes to go to? I think like that's something that I would always like, all right, choose 3 of the top 10 things. Where would you want your tax values to go? And I guarantee most of the people would go to the top, those 3. And then, very few would go to the other ones. And so you have to kind of listen to people and say, all right, I don't think that the taxpayers want to pay these things. And another thing to think about is when you go vote, when you're voting at Arlington County and you're voting for whoever, school board, whatever it is, they're always asking you 5 or 6 questions. Should Arlington take bonds out to spend money on X? On Y? We all want Arlington County to be better. But at the same time, do we have the income to pay for these things? And that's where you have to start thinking. And sometimes I recently started saying no to these because I'm like, I don't think we have the money to be paying for all this stuff. I don't want my tax bills to keep going up and keep going up. I love Arlington. I think it's great. But at some point, we got to say, all right, slow down a little bit. Let's not spend so much money on these areas and let's reduce the taxes or at least keep them the same for people. Because every year, our tax bill has gone up. And Matt, do you want me to go into particulars? You want to jump in here for a little bit?
I didn't want to jump in there at all because I think if you cut that snippet and you sent it to the right people, man, you would have a legion of Arlingtonians behind you that would be writing the name Shawn Robert Battle into the write-in section of Arlington County Board.
It's Richard, by the way. Shawn Richard Battle.
It's Richard.
Yeah,
I always thought it was Robert,
but it's close. But and it's not political at all. Like this is just responsibility in spending, right? And we all have to be responsible in spending, right? Do you spend more than you bring in, Matt? No, of course you don't, right? If you did, you'd be in debt. And there's a lot of people, let's face it, there's a lot of people that do, right? There's a lot of people that have a huge credit card debt, right? But you got to be fiscally responsible.
All right, now I'm going to jump in. So let's just bring it back down to kind of earth, kind of ground level here. Arlington County needs money to run the government.
Sure.
And pretty much the way they get that money is through taxes, obviously. And so we have the residential and commercial property taxes. And for the residential tax, if you own a property, you're going to be assessed on the quote-unquote market value of that property in January. So when you get your assessment, Shawn, they're saying, we believe through our algorithm system that your house is worth
Zillow.
Yeah. It's like, why does this look the exact same as... That reminds me in high school at Washington Lee, I had this English teacher. I was the worst student. The English teacher could not have cared less about me just because I was a horrible student. But I wouldn't necessarily study for the tests or the quizzes, but what I would do is go on Spark Notes and take the Spark Notes quizzes. And I always remember, like, I aced one quiz just because the teacher used the exact same questions from Spark Notes. It's like, yes, I finally know this. But going back to it, so we have the assessments that are done once a year. They come out in January. But then we also have the tax rate, okay? And so in Arlington County, I believe it's $1.03 for every $100 of assessed value. It's a little bit different depending on the jurisdictions. But oftentimes what happens in Arlington County is the assessments come out, usually in areas of rapid property value increases, you're naturally going to have a higher property assessment because the market value of your property has certainly increased, whereas the tax rate is voted on by the county board, and that tax rate may or may not go up. It could go down. It could stay the same. And oftentimes what happens is assessments go up, tax rate stays the same, and everyone pats their hand on their back and saying, hey, listen, we did it. And what's happening now is the county is still generating more money because of those assessments going up and that the tax rate is staying the same. And then going into this year's fiscal 2025 adopted budget, we're looking at a $1.65 billion budget, which is a 6.4% increase from the fiscal year of 2024. But, also some things to remember is that residential in Arlington County makes up about 56% of the tax base. The other 44 is commercial. And it's worth noting that existing office space was down 11.1%. And so we're in Roslyn, we're walking by these empty offices. You know, the rooster comes to crow. Is that a saying like the buck is going to stop somewhere? And, you know, it may be the homeowners that are left holding the bag. Whereas if you compare it to a jurisdiction like Fairfax, which has 75% of its tax base is residential properties, while the remaining is only 25% commercial. Now you could say, oh, well, that's just the nature of that demographic, that geographic area, but it does go to show that Arlington is a little more split down the center between sharing the burden between commercial and residential.
Yeah, and it's a tough balance, but it all comes down to spending and what we want to spend our money on. And you know, it looks like every city in America they can't balance their budget, including the United States government. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And if we were running a business, then we'd all be out of business, and that's the truth. So we have to hold our people responsible and saying, listen, don't spend this money. I don't think you should spend it on this. Spend it on X, Y, and Z, not, you know, these other things. Now, I want to give you two examples. And so from 2020, so I bought my Arlington home. I bought and sold. Finally bought this house, Matt remembers, in 2020. And this is something to be thinking about. When you buy a property, your payment is always going to go up because your property values and your taxes are always going to go up. And that's the tough thing about like values. And if you actually sit down and think about it, your government is taxing you on a value of your home that you're not realizing yet, right? You're never going to realize it until you sell. But they're going to tax you on the value that they think it's going up, which is kind of crazy. But since 2020, when I bought my property, the budget went from $1.4 billion in Arlington to, in 2025 now, $1.65 billion. That's an increase of 18%. So, you know, budgets change over 5 years. A lot of expenses have gone up. That's probably an increase that you would expect, an 18% increase. However, if you go to my property value and you go to my taxes, you will see that my taxes have actually increased not 18%, but 58%. 58% on my home. So think about what that does to your payment every month. That has increased my payment. My loan has not gone up. My rate has not gone up. It stayed the same. My property tax value has gone up $650 a month. $650 a month in 5 years. I've owned it less than 5 years. So think about what that's doing to homeowners. That's crushing them. $650 a month. That's a car payment. I mean, that's crazy amount of money compared to 5 years ago. And so you have to stop and think, Arlington County, when you're assessing these properties, can you continue to do this to people and not have some sort of reaction? And I think you're going to have that reaction this year, unfortunately.
And you have a job. You are able-bodied. You are in the working, class. You're, an age that a worker would be. But there's a lot of people in Arlington that, unfortunately, are maybe aging in place, maybe have a fixed income, maybe they have the house through different generations, and it's quote unquote free and clear. But in Arlington, in life, nothing is really free and clear, and they don't have the privilege of being able to earn an income. Maybe it's disability, a veteran, disabled, something like that, and so. I don't know what those people are going to do.
It's really hard for them. And, I will give the county credit. There are tax programs for people that are 65 and over that get benefits and things like that might get reduced taxes. Also, the military, if you are 100% disabled, you don't pay property taxes.
That's a fair point. Thank you for correcting me on that.
So there are people out there that do get benefits, which I'm very thankful for, and I think that's a good thing. But you have to be careful on where you're increasing these dollar values, and it's squeezing a lot of people.
So I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn yesterday. This was like so perfect because most people that reach out to me on LinkedIn are just spammers from the Philippines, and it's just a waste. Mm-hmm. But this guy was like, "Hey, you look familiar. Do you live like in my building?" And I said, "Yeah." And we started chatting, and he's like, "I wanted to talk to you about property assessments." And this was as I was researching this for the episode. And he was curious about appealing his property tax because he in our building, property taxes went up by assessments went up by 7.5%, where in reality, the actual property values have not gone up by 7.5%.
In 1 year.
In 1 year.
In 1 year, they increased it by 7% in this building. That's insanity, guys.
Now, I'm trying to have a takeaway here. What is the takeaway? Is the takeaway to appeal? Because I think you'd lose the appeal.
Yeah.
Or I think if you appealed, they would say, actually, your house is worth more money.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the appeal is the right move. I mean, with taxes, what do? You can increase taxes or decrease services, right? Am I missing anything from the rudimentary option there? It's funny you mentioned, decreasing services. There was an article on ARL Now about a county tree service that is losing funding because of the commercial property woes. And apparently the Arlington County government's tree canopy fund last spring said it essentially ran out of money and it was being kept alive by a one-time $250,000 appropriation from county board members. The funding goes to Eco Action Arlington and typically comes from contributions by developers seeking zoning changes for new commercial projects. We're not talking about residential, just commercial. So this one, I don't want to give this the chopping block. Maybe you will immediately, but it's kind of funny, right? It's like a tree canopy fund, but for commercial properties. Why don't you just have the developer, do it themselves rather than have like a third entity that the county government pays?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. This is one that I saw as well, and I was like, hack it, gone. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, think about this. If you own a property in Arlington or anywhere, but you own it in Arlington, say, and it's an investment property, and that investment property now is going up and up and up, and your tax value has just gone up X percent. Well, guess what that does to rents? You have to increase your rent because you have to cover these amounts. Think about how much it's 3%, 7% in this building, 7%. Now you have to, in order to make the same amount of money on that rental, if you are making any money, you have to increase the rent by 7%. And then there's probably rent restrictions on how much you can increase rent for, but you can increase the tax values, right? But then you're taxed every year on that assessed value, on that actual value of your property, right? But you're an investor, okay? And so this is increasing, and you're paying taxes every year on that increased value. And then you go to sell, and you sell on that property value of, it's increased over the years. You sell on that property value, but then since you don't live in the property, you're taxed again, 30% of that value that you've just paid on taxes on for however many years. Now that increase, you're now taxed on by the government by 30%. It's insanity if you think about it. And this is the problem with, I think, a lot of people. We're busy, right? We're working. We don't care about taxes. We're not thinking about it on a daily basis. But then when you actually think about it for 1 second and say, man, all right, income tax, and it just keeps going and going and going. And you're like, what? Why? Why am I working this hard to pay all these taxes?
The car tax.
Car tax.
At some point, we need to have a conversation about the car tax.
It's amazing. And that's the thing is like, should I, I have a house in Maryland. Maybe I'll just, I don't know what the rules are by buying a house or buying a car in Maryland and putting it there. It's like crazy.
Yeah, because then you run into, these people in Arlington garages that will title their cars and in, random
Believe me,
states.
I've seen it.
Pennsylvania,
you've lived here for 15 years.
Yeah.
Your car's still...
the thing about, I of course I like who doesn't want to be fiscally responsible?
Sure.
That shouldn't be, a party line type of phraseology. But I am very aware of how good the schools are, of how good the roads are, of how many darn speed humps and blinking light pedestrian walkways, and how the furthest an ambulance has to travel is like 8 minutes.
We have
to
tons
get
of
somewhere.
Parks. Believe me, I love Arlington. Right?
That
That's why I
costs
live
money.
here.
That costs a lot of money.
It definitely costs money.
Now, does it cost $1.65 billion
to maintain?
Probably not. What we'll do is we'll list and link, an infographic on the county website below, so you can check that out. And if you have any comments, this is more of kind of like a awareness, like a yearly awareness of, do we want our assessments decreasing? Like, what cities would your assessment just stay the same? It'd probably be cities that don't have good services, that don't have good schools, that just lack some of the incredible amenities that Arlington has.
Yeah, it's hard to say. My property, I just bought a beach house. That assessment has not increased at all, and even like it's way, way, way below what I purchased it for. So, granted, that area, it's within the city would be one thing of Ocean City, but where I live or have that house, it's totally different. But that's what I'm saying is every jurisdiction is different, and they don't have the expenses that naturally Arlington County has. But you know how we could maybe fund Arlington County taxes, Matt?
Talk to me.
Let's transition. Why don't we get a casino in Roslyn, baby? Come on.
All right, so that was actually a great transition. So, article from Fairfax Now. Fairfax County casino bill advances to full Senate for the first time. Shawn, this is the bill, the topic that just won't die, okay? It was on the chopping floor, and it's been brought back to life. So this is the push to allow a casino, not in Roslyn, but in Fairfax County, okay? So essentially, this is going to go proposed near the Spring Hill Metro stop. So SB 982 is essentially a bill that says, hey, Virginia, you need to consider Fairfax County as a possible location for a casino, because right now I believe there's only 5 jurisdictions that allow casinos in the Commonwealth. SB 982 says, listen, we got to consider Fairfax. It's got to meet X, Y, and Z. And oh, by the way, this exact destination by Spring Hill Metro does meet that designation. Now, last year, this was pushed by Senator Dave Marsden, Delegate 35. Think like Springfield-ish area, to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. So the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee voted 9-6 yesterday, Tuesday, to report Senate Majority Leader Scott Servel's bill to add to the county of Virginia's list of eligible casino hosts to the full chamber. So what's happened is Scott Servel, D34, so he is the delegate in the like Rose Hill, Groveton, Hybla Valley area. Notice he's not the Tysons delegate.
Yeah.
You're going to sense the common theme here.
Yeah.
So we had 9 yays, 6 nays on moving this bill to the next hurdle. There's still a lot of hurdles to cross. So the bill, if it did pass, which it's going to be voted on this Friday, January 31st,
Wow.
It will give Fairfax County Board of Supervisors the authority to call for a voter referendum on whether or not to allow a casino. So like you were saying with the bonds, it would just be one of those things, yes or no, should we, build a casino? So the people would decide. So it still needs to pass the House of Delegates before going to Governor Youngkin's desk for approval. Okay, that was a mouthful. Basically, Shawn, a few individuals want a casino in Tyson's Corner. Yeah, let me just leave it at that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, do you know where the delegates for that area, well, how did they vote? Do you know? Does it show in that?
Yes, they voted nay.
They voted nay, and they're the people that actually govern over that area. And so you should probably listen to them with a little more weight than maybe the guys down in Hybla Valley, right?
So Favola, Arlington, nay. Eben, Arlington, Alexandria, nay. Boysko, which is, Reston, Tysons, that area, nay. A couple other, I believe this was the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. So, these are these are 15 individuals, not from Northern Virginia, from Virginia.
Yeah.
So we've got everyone's favorite delegate, Lucas, down in the Tidewater area. You can remember her from the old debacle with the Alexandria Stadium, and says, hey, why does Northern Virginia get shiny things and we, don't get nice roads down here in the Tidewater area? So Lucas voted yay because so here's the thing. Everyone wants to talk about where does the money go, like follow the money. Who is it? Delegate Servel will say, oh, this is going to help with the burden of taxes, of office space, of vacancy, and we can help with school construction, and it's going to add $155 million in statewide gaming tax revenue, and we can bring people in, and so they don't have to go across state lines to gamble. Fine, whatever, great talking points. Mm-hmm. But in reality, a lot of this money, it goes to Richmond, it goes to Virginia, and then Virginia decides. So of course, people in the 757, people in the 804, of course, people not from Northern Virginia want this thing. And even the people that are pushing it, Scott Servel, he said, oh, well, I haven't heard anyone in my delegation that's against it. Your constituents don't live in the area.
Yeah.
They live in freaking Groveton. That's like, that's a lifetime away from Tysons. You know,
15 miles away, and
that's a world away.
In the DC metro area, 15 miles is a huge amount of space between you. And yeah, 100%. Like the people that live here don't want it. The people that are going to benefit from it on the state side, of course they want it because it's going to increase their tax revenues too. They're going to get some benefits from it. Tysons has changed a lot, and there's like city centers that have just popped up in Tysons where you go to a little area that used to be nothing, like a condo building, and now it's just like huge high rises, Capital One building, Capital One this. Like there's a lot of different spaces, and it's very cool over there. Could I see a casino there? Maybe. Do we need it? Probably not. I mean, all right, $150-some million of revenue is that going to, and Fairfax County thing's got to be enormous, right? Like that
their
budget's got to be huge. So is $150-some million really going to make that much of a difference? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like it. And is it going to be more of a burden? And how much are you going to have to spend on roads and everything else to get the casino so that you don't have a cluster there? There's a lot that goes into these things. So I'm no professional on casinos. I don't go to casinos, but it could be fun in some ways, but we can go right across the bridge and have fun.
Yeah. Fairfax County is like a beast,
It's huge.
If they were a state, how many states do you think they're more populous than?
Oh, a lot.
They would be like ranked, 40th or something as the most populous state. Like there's like 8 or 9 states, or
true.
10 that they're more populous from. I say no one wants this. I'm mistaken. 8 out of 10 Tysons residents do not want this. Okay, so the people that live in the area do not want it.
That's who you got to talk to.
The delegates, the representatives in that area do not want it.
Because they're representing their constituents, right? I mean, that's how it should be.
Yeah, someone was quoted as saying, like, show me the delegate in our area that supports this, and I'll show you someone that will never, ever win another election in this area. Nobody wants it. There's a couple of people that do want it, as we mentioned, Scott Servell, Dave Marsden, and the developer. So it's time to talk about Comstock. Okay, so Comstock owns, the land, and what they've been advocating for is an entertainment district, okay, with housing, retail, hotel, convention center, performing arts center near the Spring Hill Metro Station in Tysons. And they just say, okay, let's also do this casino thing. Let's just do all this stuff, and then we'll just sneak this casino in, and that's where we have the issue, because I said follow the money earlier. Let's follow the money. Comstock has donated over $600,000 to these politicians who are trying to push this bill forward. So the politicians are bankrolled by the developer. The developer wants the casino. The politicians that want the casino aren't in the area where the casino is going. And for some reason, it's actually not surprising that money buys votes. This is going to progress. We can't have this on the ballot. It can never get that far, because as we've seen with all the sports gambling commercials, there's going to be a lot of money involved in getting people to say yes to this, and it should never make it past Governor Youngkin's desk. It should never make it past this next vote that they're having.
Matt, welcome to politics. Like, that's it, and that's why we stay out of politics. It's just money driven. Everybody's paid to vote a certain way, and hey, maybe we could get the Arlington delegates to vote if they contribute to the tree canopy.
The tree canopy.
That would be it. It was, okay, you'll give us money towards the tree canopy. Okay, we're going to vote yes. Like, it's just not right. And you should vote the way that your people in the area want you to vote. And however that is, stay in office or don't, right?
So Fairfax County Board of Supervisors Chair Jeff McKay said that the Tysons casino bill would predominantly benefit Richmond's coffers, not Fairfax's.
There you go.
He also says that recent real estate tax increases in Fairfax on homeowners have been higher because of the state's negligence in funding public education. So a little bit of finger pointing there. Maybe he's right, maybe not. But it goes to show that it's startling when you have to wonder, let's just ask the question, who wants this?
Yeah.
Who wants this? And it's not people that live there. It's not people that work there. It's not politicians that work there. It's developer-funded politicians from not where the casino is going to go.
Yeah, and that goes right back to our first article. Like, who wants this? Give us, you have your budget up there. Here are the points. Everybody vote for their top, to see where that money should actually go. the people that live here where our money should be going.
I think everyone can see through the talking points as well. The whole,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to help out schools. Schools are pretty good.
Yeah.
Schools are pretty good. Oh, it's going to give, stable jobs. I mean, is like a waiter a stable job? Is like a minimum wage, casino dealer a stable job?
this
Like
area? That
these
ain't
are not
doing
the
anything.
jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, Tysons is what, like the Silicon Valley of the East? Is that what people say? It's like, this is not the type of job clientele that we want to be attracting. Why would Tysons ever want a casino? It makes no sense.
Yeah, we don't need it.
All right, let's move on to our final topic. Shawn, this comes to us from ARL Now. What Trump and Amazon RTO orders, return to office orders, could mean for Arlington. So, Shawn, as we're finishing up January here, it seems like every week, Trump is just doing what he said he is going to do. He's kind of in that, I think it's no surprise that his first month was just going to be a bombardment of aggressively, veiled threats of, hey, do this or we'll fire you sort of thing. And he's going to do that until he cools off. So that's the way he operates. And, we can pair the government's return to office mandates with Amazon's return to office mandates. Amazon said that employees this month also began working 5 days a week at Amazon HQ2, of course, in National Landing, Pentagon City, Crystal City. And so what we're getting is a lot of people in Arlington that are getting their butts off the couches and actually going into work. There's different statistics depending on if you like going to foxnews.com or cnbc.com of how many federal workers are currently working at home when they should be working. I've seen there's only 6% working. I've seen that number not be true. But the reality is, I think in Arlington, I saw something like 1 out of every 7 people either work for Amazon or the federal government. It's like a lot of people that are going to be affected by this. And when you have returned to the office, in my head, I just think, oh, okay, so people are going to go back in. But in reality, people have to make that decision. Do they want to continue this job? Do they want to find a new job? Do they want to find a new home? Do they want to move out of the area? So, Shawn, what are you seeing and what are you hearing? It just boots on the ground with having to go back into the office, both with the federal government and with Amazon.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in people's minds and agents' minds. So, we're talking to people on the ground, we're talking to buyers, and buyers are like flip-floppy, because we don't have a definitive of what's happening. There's a lot of jobs that are up in the air, a lot of government jobs that are up in the air. He put out out to 2 million government workers that, hey, you can take this payout and retire or not retire, but what was it called?
Severance.
Yeah, like a severance, and you'd be out by October or something like that. Resign. That's what it was. So there's a lot of people that could be affected by this, especially in this area. And then the return to work, you have to think about, all right, return to work in 7 days, you're coming back to the office. All right, well, when you're working from home, it's a completely different lifestyle. And I don't have a job where I have to be on a computer and they're monitoring me and saying you have to work, blah, 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 whatever. I'm sure that those exist and they're timed and everything else. But at the same time, what that gives is flexibility. Flexibility so you can work starting when you wake up and you don't have to commute in. And so you're saving that time. And then you can get your kids off to school and whatever. But when you say, hey, you have to now change your lifestyle that you've been used to for the last 4 years, now we got to go back. That's going to take a transition, a timing transition, because let's face it, a lot of us have kids that we've now got to think, all right, I have to get childcare now for the early morning or a babysitter or something to make sure that I can get to work on time because I have to now commute. And, commuting for the last 5 years has been amazing because, the people haven't been out as much. They've been working from home. So when it goes back to properties, and I think there's just a big uncertainty in people's minds. And, I talked to some people, they're like, some of the agents that we were talking to this week, they're like, yeah, I have a lot of buyers that are just pulling back. They're not committing. They're just kind of up in the air. And I think that's the mindset right now because no one really knows, including us. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how many jobs are going to be lost, how many people are going to lose their jobs and have to sell. And that's kind of, but that's always, right? There's always job loss and things like that. There's always uncertainty, but this is a little bit more uncertainty than people that are.
Well, how do you weigh the demand for, hey, return to office? So people are going to want to be inside the Beltway. People are going to want to be in Arlington versus the federal government could just hack thousands of jobs just
Yeah.
at the flip of a switch. How do you weigh those two things, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell because a lot of it might be like one article I was reading might be scare tactic, might be just, hey, they want you to resign. Don't take this offer because they want you to resign because then they don't have to refill that position. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to cut the fat of what they deem as fat. And they're saying, hey, 2 million people, let's see if they resign and that'll be easier on us and we don't have to refill the position, right? That's what they're thinking, okay?
Are they still, they're not draining the swamp, they're cutting the fat? Have they changed?
I don't know. That's just the term I came up with.
I always heard, hey, we need to drain the swamp. Like,
well, the swamp, I think, is
do
politicians.
people still say that? Are people draining the swamp? Is that a
I've
thing?
heard it. I mean, I think drain the swamp is more politicians, getting rid of the politicians that have been there for
hold on. Well, when
decades.
you said cut the fat, what did you mean by
Cut
that?
the fat in the government, maybe the government workers that aren't needed. That's where I was saying cut the fat. So
So you're government workers. I was talking about politicians.
Politicians.
Okay.
Politicians is the swamp.
I'm getting
the swamp.
my cut the fat, drain the swamp. I mean, we gotta have sayings for everything, don't we?
Right. Cut the fat is just leaning things out. Like that was my term, right? I mean, if there are workers out there, and we all know that there's government workers. I have friends out there. They're like, dude, I don't do anything. Like let's face it. There's guys out there that aren't doing much. But so we could trim that down, and then it all goes to expenses. It all goes to we are so far in debt. And again, this isn't political. This is just reality. Our government is so far in debt, it's ridiculous. And if we don't get a handle on this, we're going to be in trouble, and we don't want that to happen. So we have to do something, right? Is it scaring people into losing their jobs or moving their jobs? Probably not. There's ways to do this, but the problem is that we've just seen these things grow and grow and grow without cutting. And that's like if you see your credit card grow and grow and grow, and you're not paying it down, and you keep continuing to spend, you're going to find yourself in bankruptcy. And that's what we don't want to do. So somebody has to get a handle of this. And I think that's what you have to think about as the Trump administration is coming in and scaring a lot of people. That's what their mindset is, right?
Going back to Arlington and Amazon HQ2, National Landing neighborhood. I mean, if you own a coffee shop, if you own a pizza joint, a burger joint, a Thai joint, you got to be feeling pretty good about this RTO business.
You want it, man.
You got people walking the streets, patronizing the businesses, filling up the offices.
So it feels good again, right? Like people, like that's the thing. It will spur a level of satisfaction, I think, with a lot of people. I mean, sometimes going into a job is great. When I come in here, Matt, to talk to you, I always feel good when I leave. Sometimes you got to have that interaction. You have to be interacting on a personal basis with people to keep your energy up. I mean, I feed off of people. And I think a lot of other people will feed off other people. So when you go into the office and you're working together again, and you're like, man, let's get this job done. You have a little bit more energy to do that. And I think it's good for people to have that. Does it have to be every single day? Probably not. You should have a work-life balance. And I think that's where, maybe 3 days a week, you're definitely needed to be in there. And the other 2, you can not be there. But will this spur activity inside the Beltway? I think so. Will people be able to afford it? I don't know. That's the thing is inside the Beltway's gotten very expensive. So has the whole trek out.
So is everywhere?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere has gotten expensive. But what we could see is the opposite of Exodus. What is it? Everybody coming back in from the Exodus of 2020. Now everybody's saying, all right, well, I got to go back to work and I don't want this commute. So we could start seeing that, and that could benefit inside the Beltway.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's early, right? It's
early.
It's still January. He's got a lot of time to do things or say he'll do things and not do things.
Yep.
And we just don't know. But we're on ground zero, right? We're right near the epicenter. We're gonna have a front row view to everything that happens.
We'll see.
All right, well, that's just gonna about do it for another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you like this episode, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Drop a comment down below. And this might be the last episode in this studio. So if you made it just this far, you are in for a surprise next week.
Ooh, nice.
All right, for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.